Hello again, my inquisitive, powerful, discussion-based, super intelligent scholars. We're back again. Today we're talking about the Mexican-American War. What you're going to want to do right now to start is write down Statement of Inquiry. You can just write SOI. Do conflicts have a right side and a wrong side? Here we go. First off, remember everything that's underlined, bolded, you got to write it down in your notes. Now, the way we're going to start this lesson is talk about before President Polk. In 1844, all of Texas, southwest United States, and the northwest United States was not owned by the United States. All of this area, following my mouse, boop, 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 all of that whole chunk is not part of the United States at all. But during his campaign, future President Polk said, Texas will become part of the U.S. California and the New Mexico territory, that's all of this area that's owned by Mexico, will become part of the United States. The Oregon territory will become part of the United States. And this would all only take one term. He said that after his single term, he was out. He would stop being the president. Now, at the end of his 4 years in office, in 1849, he had done all of that. All of this land that you see that is this yellow color, that's all the United States. Also look at Texas. Texas looks kind of weird, but it was a state, and this was the entire state of Texas at one time. So Texas entered it as a state, and the Southwest and Northeast entered as territories. Now, a territory is an area that's under the control of the United States, but doesn't have all the rights of the United States. So it doesn't have all the rights of a normal state in the United States. Now, because they don't have all the rights, they're controlled by Washington, D.C. directly, instead of having their own legislative branch, executive branch, judicial branch, their own constitution. These big territories are just ran from Washington, D.C. So I'd get that definition down. Now, how did this happen? How did we go from all of this not being part of the United States in 1844 to 1849, all of this is part of the United States? Well, three strategies that President Polk used: annexation, negotiation, and war. First one, annexation. We learned about the annexation of Texas. It was the first big piece of land acquired by President Polk during his presidency. It was very early in the first year. This is the picture showing Sam Houston taking down the flag. They're raising up the American flag. And then this is what the state of Texas looked like. Now, this is what we claimed we owned. But Mexico also claimed, A, all of Texas, but B, they very strongly claimed all of this area in here, south of Nueces River, and then all of this East Texas and northeast into these other states was also claimed by Mexico at this time. So that might come back. But real quick, Texas was weird looking. The explanation for that is when it joined as a state, it said that it had all of that area. And the United States was like, sweet, we love all of that territory, let's keep it. And New Mexico, Oklahoma, Kansas, Colorado, and Wyoming, what would become all of those states, was part of Texas at one point. Now, as we learned last semester, Texas had a lot of debt when it was a country. It borrowed a lot of money, and becoming a state didn't make that all go away automatically. There was a big thing called the Compromise of 1850 that happened in 1850. It was a big deal. A lot of various different things happened that you'll learn about next year in 8th grade history. But one of the things that happened is Texas said, okay, I'm down to give up all of this land that I've had for this 5 years as being a state. I'll give that up if you pay us $10 million towards our debts, just to get us out of some of that trouble. And that was a good deal. U.S. took it. So that's why Texas looks so weird. So that's one of the promises down, that he would annex Texas. Now, we still got negotiation and war to see how he gets the other two territories. That was California/New Mexico and the Oregon territory. The second one, negotiation for the Oregon territory. Now, right up here, you can see what is the Oregon Territory. President Polk, he reached out to Great Britain, and after a lot of back and forth negotiations, there was an agreement. The agreement was that this line right here, which is known as the 49th parallel, it was already the northern border for a lot of the United States, and we just continued and cut the Oregon Territory in half. The United States kept the bottom half, which would become Washington and Oregon, and Great Britain kept the top half, which would eventually become part of Canada. So now we've got 2 out of 3 of the campaign promises done, and it's only been 2 years. So annexation was used for Texas, negotiation for the Oregon Territory. That only leaves war. Now, the only area campaign promise left was the California and New Mexico Territory. That leads us to the Mexican-American War. It was a 2-year-long war. Before it started, Polk tried to buy all of this land from Mexico. This is what Mexico looked like before Texas broke away. Polk tried to buy all of this. He set negotiations. They happened for the full first 2 years of his administration, but Mexico was not willing to sell it. Now, Polk wasn't going to say no. Polk wasn't going to back down. He wanted this land. So the only option left was war. But you can't just invade another country. You need some sort of excuse. You need some sort of reason so that the whole rest of the international community doesn't start jumping on you and getting mad at you. If you remember, all of this land was disputed. It was claimed by both the Republic of Texas and Mexico when Texas was independent. The United States had annexed all of Texas, as Texas claimed it had, so they thought they owned all of this. What President Polk did is he sent troops down here south of the Nueces River, all the way down here, sent them walking around. There was a big city across the Rio Grande right here, and eventually Mexico didn't really like there being people in this land that they claimed, and they sent soldiers north of the Rio Grande, and they attacked one of the small groups inside of that army. And then the president had his war. If someone else attacks you, then you're able to start a war at that point. Now what we're going to talk about right now is perspectives on who started the war. I'm going to give you the 2 perspectives. On these next 2 slides, you need to have a good idea of what each of the perspectives was. You need a note about both of them written down. Before we start on that, perspective just means a point of view. For example, the Mexican perspective is one point of view. The American perspective is another point of view. They're different points of view. Perspective, point of view. Now, the U.S. perspective is best shown by a quote from President Polk. Now, when you're a president, you have to go to Congress to ask to start a war. And then Congress declares a war, and the president is in charge of running it. So when President Polk gave this message to Congress, he said, Mexico has passed the boundary of the United States, has invaded our territory, and shed American blood upon the American soil. This was really strong words. American blood on American soil would become a very contentious, argued phrase, because this soil, which was American, was disputed. Both sides said that they owned that territory. The United States said that our people were killed on our soil. But the opposite perspective is that Mexico was just defending itself from an army that was invading them. This is an image that shows the Rio Grande in the middle and a large battle happening. It's not exactly how it looked because it was just a small skirmish, but the point still remains. Mexico said that this down here was its territory. The second an American army passed south of the Nueces River, they said it was an invasion. It was an outright attack upon Mexico. And even though Mexico shot the first shot, they killed the first Americans, they said they were defending themselves because America had invaded their country. That's the Mexican perspective. That's their point of view. And an argument can be made for both sides. Now for the war itself, the United States won a very easy victory. You can see on this map all of the different armies the United States sent through what was Mexico and what is still Mexico down here. They, in 2 years, very effectively won the battles. They finally captured Mexico City. The reason they won was their weapons were more modern. There was an advance in cannons that if you're a nerd about war, you can come and ask me about why the U.S. cannons were better. There was also better training. The United States had a place called West Point that was probably one of the best military training grounds in the world at this time. Finally, there were better generals. The United States had been training people at West Point to get really good at fighting wars. These are two images on the left that show the United States fighting in Mexico City. This was the last palace that needed to be captured to really show that we controlled Mexico's capital. This is another famous image on the bottom left. One odd thing about the Mexican-American War is it happened about 15 years before the Civil War. So a lot of the people that would be fighting in the Civil War were like very young and starting their military careers during the Mexican-American War. And General Grant, who eventually would be the supreme commander of all of the American soldiers, was fighting on the same side as General Lee, who was the supreme commander of all of the Confederate soldiers. It was a very weird time in history that 15 years later, they would be fighting against one another. Now, the way the war ended is the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. You definitely need this written down. The terms of the treaty, the terms of the agreement was that the land known as the Mexican Cession, all of this gray area right here, plus Texas, all that Texas had claimed was its land, would go to the United States. It was total of 500,000 square miles, and it included all of these states that you can see right here. And the second part of the agreement was that Rio Grande was accepted as the southern border of Texas. Finally, the U.S. would only pay $15 million for the land. This is a steal. This is a huge amount of land, especially California and Texas, which were really fertile, really good opportunities in both of those places to make a lot of money. 15 million wasn't that much. Now, if I was watching this video and I was looking at this, I was following what Mr. Harms is saying, but I don't really know the definition of the word treaty. I would pause the video right now, open up a new tab, and go and search what the definition of treaty is so that I would know exactly what I was talking about. That's just a hint. So now what we have is all three promises that President Polk had made had been completed through annexation, negotiation, and war. All right, last but not least, we have our two discussion questions. You're going to have a few minutes to answer these. First one, which phrase in President Polk's address to Congress caused so much contention? And number two, why did that phrase cause so much contention? If I were you right now, I'd be wondering, what does contentious mean? What is contention? Why is Mr. Harms throwing this word at me? But if you're watching a video, you can quickly exit out of the thing you're doing and go and search. Oh my goodness, I already searched it. It was already open. What? Contention, a disagreement resulting from opposing arguments. Now, or an opinion. So contention means like a super heated disagreement, an agreement that's like very passionate, that you feel super strongly about, very contentious. Both sides are arguing very loudly, very angrily, very strongly. If there is contention in an argument, that means it's a very strong, heated debate. Why did President Polk's address to Congress cause so much contention? All right, good luck.